Uh, Hello everyone, welcome back to Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I don't know why Maria Gori is here, but probably as a replacement for Dr. Scythe, I would assume. So, witness, please state your name and occupation for the court. Eugene Mikatoba, lecturer in forensic medicine at the Imperial Yume University in Tokyo, Japan. And Professor Mikatoba, the young lady beside you is... Ah, this is Dr. Maria Gori. Scotland Yard's practicing coroner. The daughter of Dr. Scythe, I understand. Yes, Dr. Scythe. I'm afraid I can't tell you why she's here. She just appeared.
You summon the strange Japanese man as a witness to that autopsy, but you don't summon Mama. That makes no sense. She was there too.
That's about the size of it. I've had her eyes boring into the side of my cheek constantly, whilst I was in the antechamber too. Poor man. The idea of it's making me shudder. The revelations about Dr. Scythe that came to light some days ago defiled the reputation of the entire judiciary. She was therefore deemed unfit to appear as a witness in today's proceedings. The Ministry of Justice's decision on that is final. Well, we wouldn't want any more perjury to be committed, would we? The Ministry of Justice? Some questionable strings are being pulled, I think. I remember you, Dr. Mikatoba. But I certainly never expected to be meeting you under these circumstances. Yes, it's been a long while, Lord Strongheart. The prosecution understands that you were a visiting student of forensic science in London until 10 years ago. That's right. I studied under Dr. Wilson at St. Sinners. Sorry, I'm just seeing Maria Gori out the left side of the screen. So you were present at the autopsy of my brother, Lord Clint von Zeeks. I was, yes. I assisted Dr. Wilson with the entire procedure.
Mama's far more skilled than any Japanese man.
Well, Dr. Wilson asked me to be his primary assistant on that occasion. And this autopsy report was actually penned by you, I believe. Yes, I noted all of the doctor's findings, and when we were done, he read through the document and signed it. Man, I like how I said we had an all-star cast before, but now we have an even more all-star cast now that Mikatoba is also on the stand. Also, Maria's pretty cool.
Poor Mama. As secondary assistant, she would have had such a good view of all the innards. She wouldn't have had such a good view of all the innards.
So, Professor, do you remember Inspector Gregson? Yes, of course. If it wasn't for his insistence, Lord Van Zeeks' autopsy would never have happened. But he was absolutely convinced that it would reveal decisive evidence against Genshin, you see. So Lord Strongheart had to entreat the nobility to allow it to take place. Do correct me if I'm wrong, my lord. It was a result of that autopsy that a mass murderer was apprehended and justice was done. But Gregson admitted to it before he was killed. He admitted that the results of the autopsy were fabricated. You were there at the time, so you must testify. You have an obligation to tell the truth about what really went on. Absolutely. That's precisely why I'm here.
That's why I'm here too.
Very well then. You will give your formal testimony now, witness. Man, I'm pulling out like the entire array of the octaves I have for this frickin' cast right now. But before you begin, a word of warning. Oh? You will state truthfully and accurately what you saw and what you heard at the time. I wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, my lord. The moment your testimony verges on supposition, I will expel you from my courtroom. Remember that. Huh. The autopsy of Clint Von Zieks. From my own observations, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy results having been fabricated. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange.
There were no other signs of internal injury. Nothing questionable at all. It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach.
Presumed to have been swallowed by the victim as a way of posthumously identifying his assailant. Only 3 statements? No indication? Nothing to suggest fabrication. Professor Mikotoba, are you certain about that? Well, nothing that I could positively identify as such, much less swear to in testimony. Ugh. Well, that cleans things up nicely. Wow, that is some evil... That is one evil-ass looking face if I've ever seen one. The only fabrication here, Asogi, has come from you. What? You claim the inspector confessed just before his death. But that is the fabrication. No, he freely acknowledged it. I swear he did. Freely, with the tip of a sword at his throat. The man was clearly at his wit's end. The court will give no credence to this confession that was uttered in obvious desperation. Quite simply, there was nothing questionable about the investigation of Lord Clint Von Zieks' death. And with this testimony we have, without question, uncovered the truth behind the matter. If I may, my lord. There was most certainly something questionable about it, and the whole truth does rather elude us, I feel. I beg your pardon. Well, you're obviously aware of the facts of the case. All 4 of the professor's previous victims died when an enormous beast was set upon them that ripped out their throats.
Oh, such horrifying crimes.
We have never really figured out about the supposed dog, actually. I mean, we know that, we saw the collar that apparently weared, but we haven't seen anything beyond that. But curiously, the killer's last victim, Lord Clint Von Zieks, suffered a different fate. Yes, you're right.
He was stabbed through the heart with a sword.
That's enough. I believe I warned you about this witness. I promise to curtail your testimony as soon as it entered the realms of supposition or speculation. Very well, my lord. In that case, the defense will pursue a conclusion to this during the cross-examination. What? I have the right to cross-examine every witness after testimony. And I fully intend to exercise that right. Ryunosuke.
I'm afraid that even the presiding judge has no authority to contravene the letter of the law, as I'm sure every member of the judiciary present in the gallery would agree.
Get owned. Very well. You may begin, counsel. However, the moment your argument strays from the established facts, I will not hesitate to bring the cross-examination to an end. Proceed with caution. Yes, my lord. Bitch. Cross-examination. Death resulted from a wound. Okay. This time we're actually going to press everything because I don't have as much of an idea on this one.
Hold it!
You couldn't say? No, sadly not. But then you couldn't say there wasn't any indication either, could you? No, true, I couldn't. I was at Dr. Wilson's side as he performed this procedure, recording what he said. But at times, of course, he instructed me to fetch implements and such like. Whilst I was away from the operating table, obviously I could have missed something. And at those times, what was the secondary assistant doing?
Following this Japanese man's orders to adjust the lighting or pass some implements. But that doesn't mean Mama wasn't a vital part of the team.
Quite, yes. So, would you kindly refrain from staring at my cheek like that? Professor Mikatoba, think. Was there nothing at all that seemed out of place to you? Well, yes, there was, as a matter of fact. One made by a Western-style sword, transfixing the heart.
Hold it!
And all of the previous 4 killings attributed to the professor. The victims were killed by an enormous dog, I believe. Their throats were, well, mauled? Correct. And yet Lord von Zeke's was stabbed. Do you mean to say... You think Lord Clint von Zeeks may not have in fact been one of the professor's victims? There is no basis on which to doubt the findings of the investigations carried out at the time.
But
Genshin Asogi confessed to all of his crimes upon his arrest. Yeah, he was probably frickin' brimed or... You know what, actually? I don't think we've used this yet, have we? Genshin Asogi hereby requested upon my death, over to my son, his deep sadness like set my fate in this foreign land and the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again. I regret nothing about my chosen path. There's still a lot of mysteries. He admitted to having taken the lives of all 5 members of the aristocracy. Ugh. Yet the beast that was used to carry out the killings was never identified. No evidence was found to suggest that Genshin had ever kept a dog. Then... Well, it's been 10 years. I assume if it was a dog, then chances are it's probably dead by now. Or at least if not, it's quite old. A true hound of hell. We don't know where the hell that... frickin' the dog collar we saw is, the real fancy one that was covered in blood. We saw it at the end of Case 2, and we haven't seen hide nor hair of it since. So maybe... Because Sholmes got all fidgety, and then he told Gregson to take it. So last time we saw it, it was in Gregson's hands, but who knows what he could have done with it after that.
Hold it!
Be nice if we had all the frickin' stuff from that case. But, you weren't actually present at the autopsy yourself, were you, Dr. Gory?
does that matter?
Well, I just wonder how useful your testimony can be in that case, really. I mean, it would be different if your mother, Dr. Seif, were on the stand, but...
I've read all the paperwork about the case, and Mama's told me the story countless times. The statement I just made is exactly what's written in the autopsy report.
I did confirm that myself at the time, it's true. Besides the stab wound, there was no other signs of internal trauma. I see.
Mama told me all about it.
Oh?
She said there was nothing of note internally. But they did find an amazing piece of evidence. Something unbelievable.
Unbelievable? What do you mean? Come on, Dr. Gory, what was it?
I forget.
Oh shit. Oh, never mind. Wait, she already said it.
Hold it!
Hold up. What exactly was it, though? What does beautiful but dangerous mean?
Well, it was sparkly and round with a hole, as if it might slip over a finger, perhaps.
It was a ring belonging to Genshin Asogi. My father's ring was inside the victim's stomach? At the time, Genshin wore a large ring on the digitimus quartus of his left hand, the fourth or ring finger. I'd understood it was some sort of keepsake. When my father left Japan for London 16 years ago, I was 8 years old. But I remember that ring.
You do?
My father's possessions were sent to our family home in Japan after his death, but the ring wasn't among them. Obviously not. It was a key piece of evidence. It remains under lock and key in the stores at Scotland Yard to this day. After the autopsy, Genshin was summoned by the police to check for the presence of his ring. It wasn't on his hand, of course. Moreover, there were deep abrasions on his finger where it had been pulled off.
Huh.
They arrested the man there and then, right before my eyes. How could they?
I brought the ring along with me today.
What?
Here it is. Bit dusty from years in the stores.
Good gracious, yes, that's it. I haven't seen that in 10 long years. And that was found inside the victim's stomach. ... Yes, I'm afraid so. You hesitated there, Professor Mikotoba. Should we read something into that? Well, it's just thinking back now. I didn't actually witness the moment it was extracted from the victim's body. Oh.
Oh my, really?
At that precise moment, Dr. Wilson had asked me to fetch him a new scalpel, you see. Dr. Gory, the removal of historic evidence from the stores requires my consent, does it not?
She's a 19-year-old. You really think she cares? However it came to be here, the court cannot deny that this is crucial evidence for today's proceedings.
Very well, you may submit it.
I'm glad she got it, because otherwise I feel like, you know, she wouldn't have been given permission. Clasping the gem looks sharp enough to cause a very nasty scratch. It's not the sort of ring normally seen in Japan. It almost looks like claws protecting that jewel. We must examine it very carefully, Mr. Naruhodo. Very carefully indeed.
Alright, let's do that right off the bat. Okay. These fat claws are doing a good job of protecting the equally fat gemstone in the middle of this ring.
Yes, if you were clumsy, you could give yourself a rather nasty cut on them, I should think.
Ow! Now my finger's bleeding. The claws really are sharp.
Oh my, that was very quick clumsiness, Mr. Naruhodo, even for you.
What makes such a dangerous ring? You couldn't swallow it without doing yourself some fairly serious damage, surely.
Sticky mochi bun of about that size would go down much better, with some red bean paste in the middle.
Someone as clumsy as me would probably manage to choke on it somehow. So not a second piece of evidence on it? Maybe not.
Hold it!
And that was the decisive piece of evidence that led to Genshin Asogi's arrest. Correct. After further investigations by Scotland Yard, the man admitted to his crimes. That's a lie. My father was no killer. Barrick von Zieks, it was you. You twisted the truth to suit your purposes. You're really gonna try to pin it on him? Your hatred of me doesn't change the facts that were established 10 years ago. My brother Clint had closed in on the professor. In the end, he exposed the man and put a stop to his lethal rampage. In the way only a man of my brother's caliber could. That's everything, is it?
Poor father, he looks so troubled.
Perhaps because 10 years ago, something happened that's been weighing on his mind.
Oh,
I couldn't say were his words. That phrasing was very deliberate, I'm sure.
wonder if he's had his suspicions all these years.
If that's the case, we need to use this cross-examination to prove what really happened, and remove any trace of doubt.
If we could establish that Kazuma-sama's claim of fabricated evidence was true.
Can't shy away from this now. Even if what we might uncover could lead to total calamity.
Don't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. I'll be right beside you, whatever may happen, even if we enter the gates to hell. Or Jigoku, I should say.
Internal injury, huh?
Objection!
There should have been scratches from this. The court has heard that the ring was extracted from the victim's stomach. But you didn't actually see it being removed, did you, Professor Mikatoba? That's right. As I said in my testimony before. At that moment, I was fetching a replacement scalpel that Dr. Wilson had requested. In other words, you can neither confirm nor deny whether this ring, in fact, really came from the victim's stomach or not. What are you suggesting, counsel? That the ring was never in the victim's stomach to begin with. It's entirely feasible that Dr. Wilson fabricated that detail about the autopsy. What are you saying? That Dr. Wilson... That Dr. Wilson was in possession of the ring in advance, after it was somehow stolen from Mr. Asogi. And he produced it during the procedure, pretending to have found it there, and then, in the victim's stomach.
Objection!
Supposition at best. What possible evidence do you have to support such a rash claim? This evidence, right here. That's the autopsy report. It's explicit in that report, counsel. Other than the ring, nothing unusual was noted internally, so I'm not sure how you intend to prove your point. You've already done it for me, my lord. The lack of internal injury says it all. What? To swallow a ring of this size would require considerable effort and determination. And in addition to its size, there are the sharp claws around the gemstone to contend with. My brother was a determined man, and on the brink of death even more so, I'm sure. This sounds really stupid. It's like, oh yes, he was very determined in order to swallow something. You would have stopped at nothing to ensure that evil killer was brought to justice. What if he really had swallowed that enormous ring? It's inconceivable that no traces of its passage down his throat would have remained as internal trauma. No. And there you've arrived at the sticking point. That's precisely why I had my doubts about the findings myself 10 years ago. Then why didn't you say something at the time? I did. I still remember the conversation I had with Dr. Wilson in the laboratory that day. Oh shit. Look at this! Now this is a very curious thing to find in a man's stomach, wouldn't you say? But isn't that rather peculiar, Dr. Wilson? What's that now, Mikitoba? Well, if he swallowed a ring of that size with those sharp metal claws that it has, surely you'd expect to see damage to the throat and an oesophagus, torn mucous membranes at the very least. Can we stop with talking about swallowed sharp objects? It makes me have to clasp at my throat instinctively. Dr. Mikitoba, may I remind you that I have vastly more experience than you. I'm terribly sorry.
I can think of plenty of ways to explain why no injuries would be seen. No, let's say this. The victim would appear to have ingested the item as evidence to identify his assailant. Go ahead, write that down.
So I was right. So I was right. Dr. Wilson deliberately fabricated the results of the autopsy to implicate my father. I'm disappointed, Counsel. That argument is nothing more than speculation. What? Dr. Wilson was Britain's leading authority on forensic science and autopsy work. There is no scientific basis on which to doubt the man's expert opinion. Pardon the interruption, my lord, but damage to the mucous membranes of the throat is easily identified, even in living subjects.
Using a device called an endoscope, recently demonstrated in practical use in France. I want one. The government can pay.
Sorry, that was real weird. I don't think so. And Dr. Gorey, rest assured that your removal of evidence from the shores without permission will not go unpunished.
We open up the dead to find the truth.
Oh shit. I beg your pardon.
But Mama, she chose to stitch her corpses up, with all her secrets inside. That's Ron.
Oh shit. So she thinks differently from her mother. Yo, I actually think Maria's pretty cool. Dr. Gorey. It's looking as though she's chosen to walk a different path to her mama. Maria's kind of a real one, not gonna lie. Yes, the ring. Bro, you haven't thrown your glass once. Is it just because of the camera angle that you can't throw it anymore? What about the ring? I've just remembered something. An earlier incident. What incident? The one I recounted to you before, about a memory I have. Of Genshin Asogi saving my life. What? My father saved your life? It was 10 years ago on a foggy night. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. All of a sudden. Yeah. I don't want to have to come up with voices again for these nerds. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. Next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. It was on the ring fingers of his left hand that he used to wear that ring. Ah! Are you saying... I've always believed those thugs were after me. But now I'm starting to question if perhaps it wasn't I wasn't the intended target at all. Wait, but... Genshin was arrested 2 days after that attack. And in that short interval, the decisive evidence needed to indict him was miraculously found. You mean, the ring was stolen from him? You think that's what those thugs were after that night? Oh, guess who's gonna speak up now? Oh, wait. Never mind. It's you. You pathetic coward. You expect me to believe that you weren't involved? What do you mean by that? It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who took it. You stole my father's ring. You set the whole thing up so you could paint him as a mass murderer and have him arrested. Kazuma. Open your eyes. Ryunosuke. You must know deep down. The truth can be completely obscured even when your judgment is only slightly clouded. But at the moment, you seem to be floundering through a dense fog. Holy shit. That's a good line from Ryunosuke. Is that why you were so insistent I should be present in this trial? To see you like this? Well, this is an amusing spectacle. What a grandiose expression on your face. As if you were Lady Justice herself. It seems you've thoroughly convinced yourself of this alleged fabrication of the autopsy results. So much so that you're apparently blind to the blatant contradiction that would be born out of it. What? Though it's extremely hard to believe, let us imagine that there was some misconduct during that autopsy. Look at this dude with this smug-ass, shit-eating grin. If that were the case, why would Asogi not have disputed the findings in his trial? Oh. In the closed court hearing 10 years ago, the defendant never once denied the claims against him. Isn't that right, Lord Van Zieks? Yes, that is indeed correct. Upon hearing the verdict of guilty, he merely closed his eyes, quietly accepting the judgment. The actions of a man who has accepted responsibility for his deeds and is resigned to his fate. But then...
Oh my, that is very strange. If Mr. Asogi did nothing to oppose the charges against him, then... that would surely mean there was no fabricated evidence.
An obvious conclusion at which you should have arrived many minutes ago, Prosecutor Asogi. Your twisted loyalty and clouded judgment are hampering your ability for logical thought. Ugh. Genshin Asogi's silence at his hearing can mean only one thing. There was no fabrication of evidence during the autopsy of his final victim 10 years ago. But if that autopsy was all above board, there'll be nothing to stop Lord Strongheart bringing this trial to an immediate conclusion.
Objection!
Oh? That sound effect, holy shit. Let me get a drink real quick. Thank you, Ryunosuke. If it wasn't for your frank words just now, this trial may well have ended prematurely. Kazuma? What's this latest absurdity, Counsel? My lord, your reasoning is perfectly sound, but for one giant hole. I beg your pardon. You claim my father's silence was due to the fact that there was no fabricated evidence. But there's another possible explanation. You've overlooked the possibility that he had a reason for maintaining that silence.
Objection!
Silence that would lead to him being convicted and sent to his death. If the autopsy results were an invention, there's no conceivable reason why the man wouldn't have protested.
Objection!
Oh, those results were an invention, all right. There's no question of that. Or are you forgetting that two people with a connection to that autopsy have been assassinated? Ugh. If I force the grievances I feel from my mind, I start to see you in a very different light. I think perhaps it's you who's been living in delusion these 10 years. Me?
Kazuma-sama has created one last chance for us here, Mr. Naruhodo. If we can only show there was a reason for his father's silence in his trial.
A reason why the man would have said nothing, even though he was innocent. Could it have been part of some negotiation, perhaps? Enough rhetoric. The court must be shown evidence. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asogi's silence in court? I'm glad we're getting to hear this theme again. It's been a while. It's been a while since Kazuma has popped off like this.
Take that!
This is the defense's answer to that question. Man, if only this was the right piece of evidence, because that music sync was so good when he slammed the table. As I indicated before, my patience for rhetoric is growing thin. You could have at least accompanied that penalty with an explanation of why that answer was wrong.
If Kazuma-sama's father knew that the evidence being used to convict him was fabricated, why would he have said nothing in his trial?
For me, I'd have protested my innocence until I was blue in the face. To my innocence.
So if we're right about the autopsy results, there must have been a strong reason for his silence.
Well then, perhaps he was saying nothing in exchange for some sort of clemency? That can mean... My lord, the defense would like to... Enough rhetoric, the court must be shown evidence. Okay. Asogi's silence in court. Aiding... Betting the escape.
Take that!
Is it this? It's true that Genshin Asogi's silence during his trial resulted in his conviction. But that didn't actually lead to his execution. On the contrary, it led to his escape. An escape that was only possible because he'd been sentenced to death. Although I find it hard to believe my father would have negotiated in that way, the defense is correct. A fake execution, falsification of a death certificate, and a jailbreak inside a coffin. Clearly such an elaborate plan couldn't have been carried out by my father alone. He must have had the help of a collaborator from the judiciary. I have here the dismissal note of the chief warder who was working in the prison at the time. The note reads, there are indications that the jailbreak was in planning prior to the inmate's incarceration. In other words, there were suggestions of some sort of negotiation between Mr. Asogi and the British government. Ooh. In exchange for his silence in court, he was given an assurance that he would be broken out of prison. Yes, with that sort of clandestine agreement in place, I can imagine he would have kept very quiet. I would go further than that, in fact. I would say that the elaborate jailbreak in Mr. Asogi can be explained in no other way. Damn. Order, order. First fabricated evidence and now a jailbreak conspiracy. Of course, because it's all intimately linked. The prosecution wishes to summon new witnesses to the stand. Witnesses? People who can testify about the jailbreak that took place 10 years ago.
Ah! Governor Caden! And the poor chief warder of the prison!
I won't allow this trial to turn into a farce. To summon the governor of the prison after all these years. Oh, it wouldn't be any trouble, my lord. What?
Father?
My dear friend may appear a little rattle-pated at times, but I can assure you he is extremely thorough. Did Sholmes bring them here as well? He wired both Barclay and the local prison earlier. Asking Governor Caden and Mr. Vigil to attend the Old Bailey is a matter of extreme urgency. Mr. Sholmes did that? Are you telling me that... Both men are, unless I'm much mistaken. Waiting just outside the courtroom at this very moment. Holy shit. Oh, I love these. I love Sholm so much. What a legend. My lord, you must permit this trial to proceed as you declared at its outset. You promised that we would stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Oh, this man is getting more and more pissed. His shit is unraveling. Holy shit, that music sync. God, I love it when that happens. Very well, bring in the witnesses. Make no mistake, I too would like nothing more than to lay this business to rest once and for all. Doo-doom, dun da da doom, dun da dun 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 da da doom doom. Here they are. Oh, and Von Zieks is still in the stand. Would the new witnesses state their names and occupations for the court, please? Oh god, I have to voice this dude again. Oh no, I have to do my butchered Scotsman voice from Samurai Jack. Aye, Barry Caden, Governor of Barclay Prison. Everyone calls... Oh right. Everyone calls me... your other persona, if you don't mind. Oh, I do beg your pardon. Of course. Of course. My name is Daily Vigil. I used to be the chief warder at Barclay Prison. The reason you've been summoned here to court today is to testify about the jailbreak of the so-called professor 10 years ago. Wash, the professor! We've already been through all this afore a decade ago. And the conclusion was that there was nothing untoward happened. A convict escaped from your prison, Governor. Hardly what you'd call nothing untoward. Well... The convict's death certificate was somehow falsified after he was allegedly executed. And he escaped the prison inside his own coffin. A plan of that complexity could never have been carried out without the help of somebody of influence inside the prison. Governor Caden, don't imagine that the passage of time will afford you any protection. If it turns out that you were involved in the plot to break Mr. Asogi out of your prison, then of course, the consequences will be very serious. In all likelihood, a capital punishment. Gods! Hold on there, laddie. I'll deal with... Witness. Governor Caden. Aye, sir. You have a critical role to play in the public safety of our country. A great responsibility to shoulder. The significance of your testimony in court cannot be understated. Therefore, think carefully before you speak. And Prosecutor Asogi, if you threaten the witness again, you will be held in contempt of court. My apologies, my lord. There's no disputing the fact that an intricate jailbreak plot was enacted 10 years ago. Clearly, you were both involved in some way. So you will testify before the court now and explain exactly what took place. Very well. Let the witnesses give their formal testimony. Tell the court everything you know of the plot to break Asogi out of Barclay 10 years ago. Alright. Let's hear this before we end off. The jailbreak plot. It was the day that Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office. I assigned the convict to the chief warder Vigilier and put the plan into action behind the scenes. I was responsible for Asogi right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot. I didn't ken if there was some negotiation between the convict and the prosecutor's office. All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty's great British Empire. A directive from the prosecutor's office. Are you saying that was the jailbreak plot? Aye, that's right. Who sent it? Who authorized that plan? I dunno ken that. You're saying you don't know? Listen, there was nae thing about the professor case that was nae unusual in some way. I dunno ask any questions. I just did what I was told to do. More than that, I can nae tell ya. I see. But if the jailbreak plan originated from the prosecutor's office, then one thing is very clear. As suspected, there were clandestine dealings going on between Mr. Asogi and that office. The jailbreak was promised in exchange for Mr. Asogi, for Mr. Asogi admitting to crimes he didn't commit. Sounds likely. That, counsel, is nothing more than speculation on your part. So, let me ask the defense. Oh, yes, my lord. I fail to see how these witnesses have any more pertinent information here. Do you intend to assert your right to a cross-examination? Absolutely. I have no intention of squandering a single opportunity, my lord. It seems all you Japanese are fiercely tenacious. Very well. Proceed, counsel. Next time on Grady's Attorney Chronicles. Adios, ciao, and bye-bye. Signing off until next time. Ja, mata ne.